Hello, and welcome to Beyond Borders, a space where we break down barriers between people, technology, art, and mental health. Stay with us for open, thought provoking conversations that spark ideas, challenge perspectives, and bring us closer together.
And in today's episode, we're looking at something very important, something that is peculiar to an aspect of our lives that is critical for growth. And you're very quite familiar with the quote, "No man is an island." But in today's conversation, we will discuss ways to build meaningful connections that are instrumental to growth on all sides. At the moment, society makes it quite easy to connect with people via social media, but how many of these connections are meaningful? How many are beyond transactional and have depth of purpose and foster growth and development? How many of our connections are beyond numbers on a screen and have real life impact on our growth and development? I'm going to start things off with Caroline, and I'm sure you're both excited to join me on today's episode. Caroline, you work with a lot of artists and have built a strong community of artists, creators, and even founders. In your daily interactions, what do you look out for in a connection that makes it meaningful to you?
Hi, Sprenko. Thank you for that. For,
Mhm.
for me, I think real connection starts with presence. And I don't mean personal presence, I mean with showing up, not just to be seen, but to see, so that there's a kind of a mutual exchange. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, in I think in the creative world generally, and especially in Web3, the connections that really stick aren't built on performance or positioning. They're built on shared values, on encouragement, on honest conversation. But it can be really difficult to find that depth of connection. And I was thinking about it as I was listening to you introducing the topic today, because I think the problem we face in Web3 and social media generally are the volume of potential friendships, in inverted commas, that we can have, which doesn't mirror real life, does it? And so I guess that's where the caution comes in, because we don't have the same cues on social media because we are behind a screen that we do in real life. We can't see the eyes, we don't know the background, we don't know the life history. There is no mechanism for unpicking the life of somebody on social media. And so in real life, there are less of those kind of relationships, and online there can be more. So in the volume, there is bound to be, people in there that are not particularly connected, not particularly engaged. But it takes time and it takes trust and it takes showing up again and again, not just once. You've got to keep at it. And I
Mhm.
think what I look for is people who appear at least to bring their whole selves, the messy bits, the vulnerable bits, the real bits, not the polished bits. People who listen without waiting for their turn to speak. People who don't shill to communities. And for those who don't know what shill is, it's selling, that don't sell overtly to the communities that they're a part of. People who reach out simply because they care, not because they want something in return. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And, it makes a lot of sense when you look at building, meaningful connections because you want to grow as well. And I have an interesting one for Pim because, Pim is well versed in interpersonal relationships and frequents a lot of these networking events across art, NFTs, and even outside of Web3. So I'm curious, Pim, what interests you in a connection that makes you want to build a relationship with any individual you come across?
Well, in the first cases, I'm always interested in everyone I meet and being genuinely interested in seeing what they do, what are their hobbies, who are they as a person, how is their, let's say, structure built around themselves.
Mm,
Do we have a wife, kids, a husband, or whatever? How is there? Is it a family person? Yes or no? All those little things. That's the first things I always look forward into, just to see what kind of person is it and what does he or she do. And when it comes to relationships or businesses, well, probably speaking to the person you have a meeting with, there is already a certain interest. And then you need to figure out what the interest is in the both and how you can work together. What I'm looking forward is just a good conversation, even some little jokes. I had a great conversation with somebody about a program. He was explaining the program to me, and the first 10 minutes were real small talk. You have to be a fan of small talk, I have to say. I haven't been always the biggest one, but when it comes to Web3 or more of the creative sector, I think it's quite a must. And also because people just want to talk about who they are and also a little bit vent on how their week was. And I think that's a good
Mm,
thing. That also comes that the overall conversation during the meeting or whatever you do makes it a lot more comfortable to ask questions or criticize even because you know you already have the connection with the person that is in goodwill. You're not going to
mm,
criticize someone to criticize. You really sort of working together to get the best out of the product that you're looking into or that you're trying to sell. I think that with Web3 is sometimes a little bit more difficult because the product to sell is mostly in development. So you really need to build on the product each other. So which is good, but you don't have an end product yet, and then it comes with quite some delays, I would say. But a
mm,
big thing for Web3 is when looking into connections is that many people are working, let's say, remotely or don't have a specific job besides Web3 or are in the creative sector that isn't really connected to Web3. That actually means that you're building a trustworthy relation and also a bigger relation than normal. So during events, for example, NFT Paris, you actually meet not just to talk business, you actually just meet to have some fun. And same
right.
when I'm in meetings, it's quite normal to actually invite somebody, let's say from Italy or Spain, and just let you know if you're here in the Netherlands, in my case, just send me a message, or we'll have a drink or something, or stay at the house or whatever is necessary, or just for fun. I think that's a more regular thing here in Web3, and it actually builds big relations that, besides work, actually last for years just as friendships. And I think that's a
Mm,
big thing that Web3 is a big plus for. And I hope that stays the same. And I think it actually with the current, let's say, market situation, it actually benefits a lot more because you really know what people will be there in the next 10 years. So I think that's the big plus when it comes to building international relations on Web3. And that's also the way to go.
yeah, thank you. Listening to both of you, I think it's safe to establish that there are specific aspects of relationships that need to be considered while looking to build connections with people who would go on to define whether you're friends with them, acquaintances, community members, customers, subscribers, a mix of one or the other. And I think that's a good place to start. While both of you were responding, I could pick out community. And being in Web3 is a huge part of the ecosystem. And but I'm curious, Caroline's a community builder. You're part of a communities as well. And knowing that is a core aspect of Web3 for creators, founders, or as a brand, you know, I'm curious what community means to both of you. So I'm gonna start off with Pim. What does community mean to you? And the communities that you belong to, what roles do you play, and how would you describe the impact of your connection with the members and maybe the founder of the community itself?
Yeah, great question. I actually wanted to say, well, during when you were talking, I was thinking, well, I have a certain, well, not really a certain role, but I put myself in a certain role when it comes to communities because I don't have the time to message every day or to
Mm,
be there, really being there every day. So I set myself more in the sense of, if you need me, I'm always there. You can ask me
mm-hmm,
whatever you want, and I will hope that I can do the same. And my questions towards other people might be more direct in the sense, okay, can you help me with this or that?
right.
Instead of having talking about the weekend, let's say. But the most important part of community for Web3 in general is that there are a place for tips, friendliness, events, just to talk, it's very wide first in what you can do with communities in Web3. And every community is different. I think you have a community of Caroline, which is very caring, if I would say. If somebody places a personal message in the community, you really see everyone reaching out and telling, okay, it's going to be okay. How are you doing? This and
Mm.
that. And the other communities that I'm sometimes is more business-like. So every community itself has a role, and then you have your role within the community. But I think it's one of the most important aspects of Web3, because without community, you're not building, you're also not expanding your reach, you're not ex looking into ideas. If you all need to do it on yourself, you will not see progress in the upcoming year, because you need the other people, and you need friends, and you need people that you know, you need tips of tricks from the others to actually build
Mm.
and expand. And so I think that's the most important part of the communities.
Thank you very much. How about you, Carolyn? As a community builder, what does that mean to you? Is it a Discord server, Twitter, WhatsApp group? Is it those who can consume your content or purchase your art products, or community? Does that just tie around those who consistently show up in your spaces?
Super interesting question, Sprenko. I just want to circle back a second to something that Pim said at the beginning there. You know what? I think sometimes we underestimate the value of the quiet ones in a community. And I've been part of
Mm.
several communities that I've ended up being booted out of because, like Pim, short of time, not able to show up and contribute in the way that, I might like to. And there's an immense amount of guilt on my side with that. But sometimes, you know yourself, Sprenko, we are spread so thinly that it's incredibly difficult. So I think it's, if there's anybody listening that's building community, never, ever underestimate the power and value of those that sit quietly, that remain in your community, that may not be particularly active, because you never know how they're feeling. They may be your staunchest supporter in the background, and you've just booted them out of your community. So I just wanted
Mm.
to add that in before I go on. Okay, so back to your question. What does it mean to you? It's certainly, community isn't about a Discord server, a flashy, Twitter presence or a WhatsApp group or Telegram. And it is, I don't even think about it in terms of those who, consume whatever content I'm putting out or buy my art or my products. Community is a feeling for me, and it may sound a bit strange, but it's about the people that consistently show up in your spaces, those that you sense a connection with. They get you, you get them. So it
Mm.
isn't about a server or a social feed. It's a sense of shared momentum. And I think Pim is right. There are different communities. And it was so lovely for you to say that, the W3W community is a very caring community, because I get that too. I get that vibe. And that is super important. And I also get what you're saying about a lot of them being business-like and very structured around an NFT sale or whatever it is. It's transactional. And I
Mm.
guess that's why you get booted out from such communities, because you're not contributing in the way that they are expecting you to contribute. So for me, it's about shared momentum. One of the things that I'm trying to do in Web3 personally is raise the motivation level of artists generally in terms of understanding the value of being together, of creating together, of lifting each other and lifting the whole space by doing that. And that's no easy task, because people are reluctant to share. Artists, by their very nature, work in isolation. And so getting people to be more open and to be less judgmental of their own work and less comparing of their colleagues or those that are sitting alongside them in Web3 can be incredibly difficult. So I think I've answered your question, probably a bit more, Sprenko.
Yes, and it's been very insightful, listening to both of you. And I'm pretty sure, community would mean something different for every creator. But having a good understanding of what community means to you helps to know what kind of community you want to build or belong to. And I think that's a great point from both of you. I want to take it a step further and just ask, the communities you both belong to, the relationships you have with the members of the community, how does that impact you, and how do you manage to keep those relationships meaningful? We can start off with Pim. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, trying to be meaningful for the other one, for the other people in the community is essential. So being genuinely interested in actually comment with the intention to help or to add something to the post or whatever that person made. In my case, I speak with during meetings with some people I know via communities and working together as well. That makes it a lot easier to sustain the relationship you have with that person because you're speaking during a meeting where you see a face and not just typing out what you think or what you want to say. You're
Mm,
speaking, you're laughing, you're making jokes, you're discussing, you're criticizing, you're expanding, and you're improving together during meetings or during projects, which makes it a lot easier to sustain those relations. And when it comes to the rest of the community, I think it's always important to when a message has been sent that has some importance that you reply to it with the same urgency and with the same intention. That actually showcases, okay, this person, or in this case yourself, generally reads what is in the community and generally wants to add something to the community. I think that makes it keeping the relations valuable a lot easier and also more, how to say, automatic without really thinking about it. It just feels natural. Um,
hmm
I think that's the easiest way of doing it. That also keeps all the relationships you have or might have in the community a lot easier because you seem approachable and you people might approach you, and it also makes it easier for yourself because you have showcased that you show interest, that you can actually message people via the DM or whatever it's allowed in the community with questions, and then you can have a conversation about that certain question, and then again you improve together. I think that's the best thing to build relationships, and eventually we keeping those relationships is the same as the others. Try to be in meetings, joke around during events, see each other, shake hands or hug, whatever you do, whatever you prefer really, and then keeping those things just going, even on outside of the community when you have, of course, you have your community chat, but when you look at X or Instagram, be there as well when you can, just with a normal like is enough or comment when there's a comment to be made. I think that's the best thing.
Yeah, thank you, Pim. Carolyn, I know it's very typical, for creators and community builders, founders, they're so busy behind the scenes trying to ensure that whatever's being worked on is, successful. So I can understand that there's often a one-sided relationship, creators or founders and the communities. And, in a lot of communities, members can feel used or left out. So I'm curious. I know Pima shared a lot of interesting takes, but I'm curious how you keep a mutually beneficial relationship with your community. Is there a lot of pressure to stay active? How do you navigate that to ensure that the relationship you have with your community is a solid and meaningful one?
Sprenko is a difficult question to answer, but you're right, and we see it all the time, don't we? With, projects that come up, and there's all the hype and the interest, and buying the first NFT or whatever it would be, and then it goes quiet and there's no feedback, or you might get, a message to say that, the team are working behind the scenes and that, and then 6 months later you've heard nothing and everybody's like, what's going on? It loses impetus. And yeah, I don't care whether they come back with all guns blazing. That gap speaks volumes to the community. The silence speaks
Mm,
volumes in terms of their importance. Now, having said all of that, I don't mean what I'm about to say to sound transactional, because it isn't, because One of the things that I do, I think, or I try to do at least, is to stay human, to think about how I feel in those situations, how I've felt, buying an NFT, supporting a project that I thought was doing really, really well, and then have them disappear. How I have felt when I've been booted out of a community for not being able to keep up with the chat and feel integrated. And so I know how that feels to me, and I don't want anyone in the community that I'm part of or leading or, whatever part of the team to ever feel like that. So it's simple, isn't it? Check in, thank people publicly and privately for what they've done. If they've come to a space or they've, done something in the community, then thank them because their contribution is valuable to you as well as to the community. And I think what I've come to realize from the feedback from the community on what Web3 Wednesday does particularly is that we create spaces where people feel seen. So it doesn't matter if there's two in the space or 10 in the space or 100 in the space.
Mm.
Everyone feels seen, whether they're on the stage or not. And I just love that because that is what it's all about for me. Because I remember 2 years ago arriving in Web3 and feeling very alien and very out of it. And so it
Mm.
was spaces like that that helped me to integrate. And if we're talking about onboarding, that is what we need to do. That feeling is what we need to recreate. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense actually because I know, from the first, two episodes that we put out, some of the feedback has been, oh, this is so insightful. I'm trying to get into Web3. I'm trying to get into maybe digital design, be a creator, but I'm struggling because there's this challenge to fit in, and people who are already in this space sort of make it look like, oh, you're too late or you have a lot to catch up on, and there's hardly any time or dedication or space to accommodate people who are looking to come into Web3 or just be part of new communities or who just want to
Mm.
build meaningful connections, to inspire growth. So I believe these shares have been very, impactful. And I have a follow-up question though, because even in the Rota community, sometimes, the focus is mental health, but sometimes people are struggling internally, and it's not everything they want to share with. Sometimes people are creating, they're putting out content, and it's like the algo is against them and whatnot. So I'm curious though, from your perspective, what would you recommend to people who are tired of connections that do not serve them, or people who are just generally seeking meaningful connections? And this is even outside of Web3, generally in life, as a community builder, as a mentor, artist, author, what would you recommend from your experience, to people who are looking for, meaningful connections currently?
Great question, Sprenko. First, I'd say let go of the guilt around pruning your connections. Not every connection in life or Web3 needs to last forever to be meaningful. So that's the first thing. If a connection consistently drains you, leaves you doubting your worth, or only shows up when they need something, that's valuable information in life, in Web3, wherever. You don't have to put up with that. It's as simple as that, isn't it? I now
Mm.
tend to trust energy, and even in the virtual space, energy can be sensed. We know this, in spaces, even on the timeline. Look for people whose presence leaves you more grounded, not less. And seek meaningful connections that last. I think it's a layered question, Sprenko, because you know, it, tired of connections that do not serve them. That, on the one hand, you can look at that and respond in the way that I just have with regards to guilt, etc. But on the other hand, you could look at that and you could question the person who is tired of the connection that doesn't serve them and ask them to question what it is that they're expecting from that connection. Because I think sometimes within communities, people arrive expecting too much from the
Mm.
community, expecting that they will be their customers. And we've talked about this before in spaces, and I've seen it within my own community, how destructive that feels to me when someone comes in with an extraction mindset. They are intent on having the community buy from them. It's just not going to
Yeah.
happen. So think sometimes that, we have a responsibility to sort of help people in the community understand that if they're tired of the connections, if they feel like the community isn't serving them, well, what are they looking for? What is
Mm.
it that they're expecting from this community, and is their expectations too great? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. It is, because at the end of the day, right, we have to align with connections that align with our values, who we are, and a lot of that stuff. So it really makes a lot of sense. And I just want to throw this over to Pim real quick. Um, how you manage, being for lack of a better choice of word, a passive community member. How do you manage connections that turn out differently from your expectation? You find someone interesting or a connection interesting, you're building up, it's meaningful, and along the line, it becomes a connection that no longer serves you, or you feel like it doesn't align with your vision anymore. How do you handle that?
Well, you can always still be friendly towards that person. I think that's step one.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the outcome is not what you thought of it, or the other way, the same for the other person. Um, yeah, just be friendly and see maybe later on, maybe in different parts of your life or in the upcoming years, the outcome or the preferred outcome is more aligned with that person later on. The only thing is that when you keeping that relation, let's say, active, when the outcomes are so far apart what you want to do, is going to be more difficult because also when you're working, when you have a business besides the communities, there are things that are very important for yourself and for your own business. You cannot drag yourself along to be friendly towards everyone. And so sometimes you have to be a little bit selective on who gets your
Right.
attention and the other way around. I
Mm-hmm.
totally understand that sometimes people think, when I think, for example, I think we have an outcome that is very aligned and the other person doesn't. I understand that they make time for the others first.
Mm.
Same thing what I do, but the thing is that you do have is mutual respect that you say, okay, when I send a message or when I receive a message, eventually I will reply. And if it's later on, I will apologize or say, oh, thank you for waiting. I just had a busy, and there are some projects that are my priority now first, and then maybe later on we can talk about it in a meeting or whatever is needed. But
Mm.
sustaining those relations that have a different, let's say, view on a preferred outcome, it's also good to just tell, okay, look, this is what I searched into it, and what you're searching is totally different than mine. I currently do not have the time to work on that. I have other priorities that are more essential for my business or for my face in the community, and that's
Mm.
totally fine. Just be honest about it and be friendly. I think that those are the most important steps.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's been super insightful, and there's so much we can learn about, the kind of relationships that we have with others, how meaningful they can become to our respective journeys. And before I come back to both of you, I'd just like to quickly highlight a few things that, have stuck out for me, which is, we have to stay true ourselves at all times, no pretense, and we have to seek relationships that align with our values, be realistic with expectations, and keep them balanced. Caroline has hit that on the head beautifully. We have to set and respect boundaries, because sometimes people may not have capacity for you in the communities you're part of, and the relationships you're building doesn't mean that it's not a meaningful connection. They just are unable to come through for you in the capacity that you want. And we also have to be comfortable walking away from connections that no longer serve us. And I think one last thing I will add is be authentic and willing to stand out. But Caroline, anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
I just add this connection is not about quantity, it's about resonance. Not everyone will get you, and that's okay. But the ones that do, those are the ones who make the journey not just possible, but amazing and also sustainable. So be open, be honest, and don't be afraid to walk away from what doesn't feel true. Meaningful growth always begins with meaningful connection to yourself first, as Pim just pointed out, and then to others.
I love that. Meaningful growth always begins with meaningful connections. That's a very beautiful place to put this episode to a close. I think, Pim, anything you want to add there?
No, not really. I think Caroline said it very, very good.
Yeah, I appreciate you both for coming through today. It's been episode 10, and that's it for today. Thank you guys for listening. If this has sparked an idea or helped you, come find us online. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. We've been seeing the comments and engagement, so we appreciate every single one of you. This has been Beyond Borders. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with us on social media. It's been the end of season one. It's been fantastic. And I hope that as we prepare for season two, with more insight, more topics, more meaningful connections that we hope to share with you, you would follow us along the journey and ensure that we cross beyond borders to growth and self development. Thank you and see you in the next season. Have a good one.